All right, so I want to talk about how to make things important versus labeling things as important. I guess first I'll describe the labeling things as important. I think it's kind of typical what we do when it comes to our personal tasks and activities that we choose to do. It could be anything that we choose to do. Got to wash your car, it's really dirty, you got to get it done. You got to work on your taxes. Exercising, really important. You tell yourself that sometimes. But what you normally don't call important are things that you claim are unimportant. You know, like watching TV, surfing social media too much, or YouTube, Netflix, whatever. Now, if you're a YouTuber, maybe watching YouTube is ranked a little bit higher. And then there's hanging out with friends. Sometimes hanging out with friends is important. It's just how much time hanging out, drinking all night long, different things. Everything's going to be different for every person, but the main point I want to make is when you think of something in the future, even if it's in an hour or the next day or the next week, and you say, that's important, I got to get on that, I got to get it done. I call that labeling or future labeling. You're labeling something with a label that says important on it. You're taking a label and you're sticking it on this metaphorically. The problem with that system is the success ratio is not perfect. We will label a lot of different things on a daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly basis as important, very important, different degrees of importance. And a percentage of them don't get started when we say they're supposed to be started. They don't get started at all, or they get started and they don't get completed. And I started thinking about that. And then you have to start thinking about all these things like motivation and persistence, and your brain starts getting a little bit clouded. Of course, you got to think about priority and different conditions to decide on what you should do first and everything. The problem is the success of the performance ratio it's not good. So I started using a different method, and I go, how can I improve the ratio and just make the whole thinking process and the action process easier? I just started doing this technique that I call making things important. And making things important is simply by doing something you're making important. No more labels. I'll give you a couple of examples. Instead of sitting in the house or the apartment and saying, oh, I got to exercise tomorrow, it's really important. I don't do that anymore. I do not say it's important because it's in the future. I already know it's important. I know I don't have to say it's important in maybe a subconscious effort to convince myself of something. I already know it's important. It's just down to choice. So I use this method called making it important. Making something important is done at the exact moment that you are taking action and you are in that activity. You have started it, you're physically touching it. If it has to do with exercise, like I'm on this treadmill right now, the mere fact that the treadmill is operating and my feet are on the treadmill, I am actually in the present action of exercising, and that qualifies as making something important. Kind of think of it as touching and taking action on things that you want to make important. Eating healthier, it's another item. Until you actually get some food in your mouth and start chewing it and swallowing it, or that is the time when you're making eating healthier important. So now I am making eating a healthy breakfast important. And I can't make it important until it's actually in my mouth. I'm chewing it and then I swallow it. So I'm going to make it important right now. And if I'm by myself, I'll try to remind myself to say I'm making whatever important. So I'll show you exactly what I do. Even if I have to talk with food in my mouth, I'm going to do it. I'm making eating a healthy breakfast important. I'm making eating a healthy breakfast important. I'm making eating a healthy breakfast important. If there's other people around, I'll just repeat it in my head. And I'll say it over and over and over. And if, which is pretty rare nowadays, it wasn't rare when I was growing up, it's pretty rare nowadays. If I eat some fast food or some junk food, I will try to do my best to remember and say, I'm making eating this fast processed food important, or I'm making eating this junk food important. It's what you do, it's the action that makes things important, not what it is. I am making eating snacks / processed / unhealthy food important when I stick it in my mouth and chew it. I swallow it. I'm making eating junk food important. It doesn't matter what you do with your time, whether you think it's good or you're bad. If you're willingly using your time for some activity, you're making that activity important, regardless of what it is. And it, as ridiculous as it may sound, it's a clarity tool. I'm crystal clear on exactly what I'm doing because everything that I do, I'm making important. And it makes me think, I shouldn't be making this that important. I should be making other things important instead. That's the clarity. That's the clear thinking that I get from making everything important as I do it. I get this ultra clarity, and it somehow gives me more clear thinking and understanding to modify or adjust my decisions on what I take action on, what I make important. I'm not saying to stop playing video games. I'm not saying to stop watching TV. I'm not saying to stop hanging out with friends and having a social drink or two. I'm not saying stop any of that stuff. I'm not even saying stop eating junk food. I'm just saying be crystal clear and realize that you're making it important and at least gain the clarity so that you have more clear options on deciding what you will choose to make important in the future. That's it. Game gives me a little more contrast between the things that I choose to do. So something else that has to be realized, if I sit down and watch TV, I will say, I'm making watching TV important as I grab the remote control and I turn it on and my eyes look at the TV and I start watching. I'm making watching TV important. I'm making playing video games important. When the control's in my hand or whether it's on a phone, your fingers are touching the screen or the joystick or whatever it is, and the game's actually operating at that exact instant, I am making that action or that activity important because I am willingly using my very, very valuable and precious time. I might talk about time in another video, but please realize that from both a universal standpoint and from a human standpoint, time is one of the most precious things, possibly the most precious thing. A lot of people think it's money, their children, and all these other things. I'm not going to argue or debate about all these things, but I believe it's time. So whatever you electively or willingly choose to do with your time, you're automatically making important. In my opinion, that's a lot more accurate way of doing things. So yes, I'm saying if you're hanging out with the friends, drinking all night and having your hangover in the morning, or reading a book, or visiting your parents, or exercising, going to work, anything that you willingly do with your time, you're making important the moment that the activity actually starts. So in a way you can just almost think, to help you understand this, is think of it in frameworks of whatever you touch, you make important. Touching meaning taking action on, starting the activity. Eating a bag of chips, you're making eating a bag of chips important. The second that chip goes in your mouth, you start chewing on it and you're swallowing it. In that instance, I'm making eating a bag of chips important. It kind of wakens your mind in a weird way. And in my viewpoint, we've kind of conditioned ourselves to think eating a bag of chips is important. Is that crazy? Is that insane? Well, you're using your very precious time on it, and you're not doing something else. If you were doing something else, the other thing that you would be doing would be important, and this thing wouldn't be. So when you start thinking a little bit more actively that everything that you do is important, you start to rate and evaluate your activities and your choices a little bit differently. You're like, I sure am playing a lot of video games. Now, if you're a professional video gamer or something, or you're learning, then you need to make playing video games and being aware of the video game world and environment, that's what you need to do. That's your focus point, to pursue your goals and whatever it is you're after. But a lot of people are not on that path and play video games for a lot of other reasons. And I'm not saying any reasons are good or bad. I'm just saying that, are there other things that you could do at that time that are going to have better results and better outcomes for you from a health standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a financial wealth standpoint, for a relationship standpoint? Once you start seeing all of these activities that you're doing as important, you're weighing, and maybe, just maybe, with this little extra bit of clarity, you're making adjustments. I'm going to squeeze down the video gaming just a little bit, and I'm going to increase the exercising a little bit. Or I'm going to do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that. The clarity starts developing, and with that clarity, in effect, the result, a little more power in selection, in choosing. You start to feel like you're more in control of what's going on in your day-to-day. And the outcome for me is, or I feel like I'm more productive. I'm consciously making choices I'm going to do, and I'm being very honest with what I'm doing with my time. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, hadn't seen him in a while, came up to me and I saw him. I was really happy to see him. And he's like, John, so good to see you. He goes, man, I gotta give you a really important announcement. I gotta tell you something. I'm starting a new online business and it's gonna be so great. It's gonna be an e-commerce site and this and that. And the first thing, oh my God, it's so important. First thing I gotta do is build a website. I'm gonna put videos on it, testimonials, and an FAQ, and all this other stuff. And he's like almost, you could see his body moving. He's really excited. His voice is, it's like, wow. This guy he's getting ready to take off like a rocket. And then a few months later, I see him. And I say, hey, what's going on? I go, hey, give me the link to your new website. I want to check it out. And his energy drops a little bit. He's like, I didn't really get a chance to start it yet. I've had a lot of different things pop up, and it's on my list. It's a hot item. I'm going to be getting on it really soon. And as soon as I get it going or get it up, I'm going to get you the link right away, and you can check it out and maybe give me some feedback or something. Okay. So it was never started. 3 months prior, it was so important. It's the first thing. 3 months time passed, and he didn't even start the website. So my challenge question to you is, was it ever important? Was it ever important? So here's the thing. You might be thinking, oh, that's a trick question. You can answer it either way. It doesn't matter. If you have to think about it, and you have to consider it, and you have to consider both sides and weigh it out and see which one's better, which one seems more rational, and all this other kind of stuff. What we've discovered already is that we're unclear. We're unclear on what importance is and how it should be used. Clarity is incredible. I'm not saying I'm right, but my answer to that question, because I use my definition of making things important now, it was never important. Because he didn't actually touch the keyboard or hire someone that started working on building his website. There was no action started and no action in progress. And according to my making it important definition, it was never important. It was just labeled as important. A big old label with neon signs and fireworks saying, this is so important, this is so important. Nothing happened, nothing had started in 3 months. And with the current track record, it may never get started. That contributes to the bad ratio that I was talking about earlier. Make things important. And I've been doing this for a while now, maybe 6 months, I can't even remember. But still to this day, when I get on the treadmill, I hit the start button and it starts moving, and I got to move my feet or I'm going to fall off. At that moment, I tell myself, absolutely every time mentally, and a lot of times I'll even say it verbally out loud. If there's no one around, I'll say, I'm making exercising important. I'm making exercising important. If I watch TV, I'm making watching TV important. I'm making watching TV important. It doesn't mean it should be important. It just means I'm making it important simply by doing it. Making hot water for me and my wife in the morning, important. I'm making hot, fresh squeezed lemon juice for me and my wife, important. We're going out to eat, I'm making it important. We're eating at home, I'm making it important. I'm lounging around, doing nothing, being lazy. Well, I'm making lazy being important. Whatever I willingly choose to do with my time, I'm automatically making important. And another funny thing is, once I adopted that method of determining importance, I don't have to, it's like there's so much less brain work that's required to get started on things, and to do things, to choose, to select. It's actually made it very, very simple. I've removed a lot of the mental resistance, consideration, thinking, processing, factoring. I removed a lot of that. It makes it a lot easier to do things. I have more visibility, clarity to what I'm choosing to do, and I have absolutely been leaning towards things that I desire to become more important. There's probably a million different ways that you could punch holes in this definition and tear it apart, and I've even thought of some myself. But the point is, it's not something that I'm suggesting anyone adopt absolute and perfectly. I'm just suggesting it as maybe a test, an experiment, or a little trial. If you get anything good out of it, that's all I hope for. And I invite anyone, if you try it and you come up with adjustments or tweaks that strengthen it and make it better for you individually, please experiment, please test, please modify, do whatever it is that's going to help make your life better as an individual, and success, my success and your success. Make it important. Make it important. Okay, I'd really like you to try this out and make it stick, making it important. How about if you just do a one-day test? You don't even need to think about anything I said. Just maybe on a piece of paper, write down, make it important, carry it around with you, write it on your hand, and everything that you do for, let's say, at least 8 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours, if you could do it for 2 days, try a 2-day experience or experiment. Anything that you do, basically anything that you touch and take action on, just say, I'm making eating important. I'm making eating processed foods important. I'm making eating healthy food important, whatever it is you're eating. I'm making drinking this can of Coke important. I'm making, if you're actually exercising, you're stretching, jogging, lifting iron, pumping weights, whatever, as you're doing it, say, I'm making whatever important. I'm making lifting weights important. I'm making running on the treadmill important. I'm making exercising important. I'm making swimming important. I'm making eating potato chips important. I'm making watching TV for 3.5 hours important. I'm making video gaming important. Just keep saying that for everything that you do, and realize that I believe, and I think a lot of people, maybe the higher you go up the financial food chain into the ultra wealthy, I think the clarity on how valuable time is becomes crystal clear. Time is involved in everything. Time's involved in almost every single thing you can think of. It's related to production performance. If you own and operated your own business and you pay somebody X number amount per hour, and you have 2 candidates, this person could do double without sacrificing quality, and this person can only do half. Which person is going to have a higher valued productivity? It's going to be the person who can do double, because within a specific amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. All of your races, any kind of race you can think of, most competitions, they're all timed in one form or another. The whole human world is so integrated and tied and rated based on some function of time. And our lifetime is limited. Time is important. So anything that you apply your time to, in my eyes, is automatically important, regardless of how ridiculous, how crazy it may seem. Everything that you basically touch and you do is important in my definition of making it important. So just do the test, see what happens. If it doesn't work and it's a total waste of time, put some bad comments on the video. If it helps you out, then put some good comments. So hopefully it's going to help you out. All right, thanks.